Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions. You guys know the drill by now, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in a future episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a YouTube message. So the first question for today comes in from a pancake who asks, why do you think that DICE hates mods so much? So I don't necessarily believe that DICE themselves hates mods or the modding community, but I believe it's just the fact that EA believes that if they gave mods to Battlefielders, that it would cut in their profits. And the scenario that I can come up with is that DLC profits would be diminished because you come out with Battlefield, Battlefield 3 for example, the close quarter DLC is launched. If there are these modding tools at their disposal, then everyone could just wait a couple of weeks. The modders could kind of buckle down and create those same exact maps. Potentially they could do this, create the same exact maps for free, and then everyone can just play on the modded maps, and that would of course cut into EA's profits. I don't necessarily think it would be that large of an issue. I think that probably EA is overreacting a little bit, but I'm assuming that's kind of their thought process behind things. They did come out a really long time ago, before Battlefield 3 was released, when they were talking about this, that the Frostbite engine is way too advanced, and if they did release this to the public, that it would be way too complicated, and that no one would be able to wrap their head around it, and they wouldn't be able to create mods or maps anyways because it just is so ridiculous. But I think that's just kind of a cop-out, and it goes back to my point where they just don't want to lose any profits. I mean, they are a company, they do want to make as much money as possible, and they're not going to implement something that could reduce those dollar signs. But in all honesty, I actually think that this would be a good thing for EA and DICE. If you can keep your player base having fun and enjoying your product for years in advance after it's been released, which I think a modding community would help do, they would be more likely to pick up your new shiny Battlefield product. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe the marketing department at EA headquarters is looking at some sort of statistics, or maybe they're looking at some sort of figure that completely contradicts what I just said. But from the lens that I'm looking at, I would assume that having mods in Battlefield 4 would not only be amazing for Battlefielders, but would also help out EA and DICE. So the next question for today comes from Coryllium, who asks, I have an idea to make the Recon class more about gathering information for your team and not just sniping from 1,000 meters away. My idea is to make the class immune to spotting. This will allow them to get behind enemy lines easier, destroy key structures, and gather intelligence. I like where your head is going. I think that the Recon class definitely should be more about trying to help out your team and playing kind of as a support, where you do get behind enemy lines and your objective and your goal is to place C4 on tanks, to put C4 on key structures, to flank your enemy and spot for your entire team so that you can help them hopefully win the match. And as of right now, it's kind of just about playing as a sniper, and as you said, sniping people from 1,000 meters away, and while that can be very satisfying for some players, it doesn't really help out your team. And if DICE did decide to make it so that you couldn't be spotted as a Recon, man, would that be a huge buff to that class. I mean, not being able to be spotted in a Battlefield game would be a huge bonus and would elevate the class to easily one of the best in the game. It was a gigantic advantage over everyone else. And you're right, if that was part of the system, it would allow them to sneak behind enemy lines, it would allow them to play that stealth role, be sneaky, and gather intelligence for your team. But this would also benefit snipers that are doing what you're trying to avoid, which is the ones that are 1,000 meters away from the objective, because now they're even more hidden. You may see the sniper glint, you may expect there's a sniper out there, but if you're not able to spot them, it's going to be even harder to try to get them out from their camping spot. So I like where your head is going. I like the idea of giving the Recon some tools to be a little bit more sneaky than the other classes out there, but at the same time, if you had just this blanket benefit of all Recons being immune to spotting, it would make camping snipers even a larger issue than it currently already is. So the next question for today comes from BusyMan05, who asks, I think it would be a cool addition to put in interactive clouds in Battlefield 4. You would be able to get in them to disappear from radar or to escape from a stinger. This would improve air combat, and it would be a potential nerf for the lock-on weapons. I would love this for the upcoming game, and even before Armored Kill DLC came out, I talked about having like 3D clouds in the game and how this would really switch up air combat and would make it a little bit more interesting, so I am completely on board with this idea. You were right, it would make it so that you could use the clouds to your advantage, because as of right now, at least for jet combat, if you get into a firefight with some of them, it's just basically you go around in circles and you try to turn as quickly as possible, and it's kind of like its own mini game in itself. But in all honesty, that seems a little boring to me, and it's one of the reasons why I've never really got involved with jet combat, at least. I just stick with the attack helicopters because I find them to just be more entertaining. And if they had clouds in the game, if you could use them to your advantage and they were very thick so you could actually go through them and block line of sight, you could go through a cloud, veer off to the left or the right, and then the guy following you would have to make the decision, well, should I kind of veer off to the left, kind of assume that he's going to go in a certain direction, and then it really just switches up that entire dynamic. And it would also make it so that you could potentially get away from Stinger missiles. I'm not exactly sure how that works in real life scenarios. I would assume that if you're getting locked on by a Stinger missile, it wouldn't matter if you go through a cloud or not. It would still follow you. But if they did have a system like that, it would just make things a little bit more interesting. And it doesn't have to be on every single map, because if you think about it, clouds are usually way up in the sky, and if there was just these really low lying clouds at every single map, it might look a little funny. But if you play on, let's say, a map that's in the mountains, or you play on a map that is on really high elevation, clouds are closer to the ground, and you could have this dynamic in the game. So I would be thrilled if this was in Battlefield 4. I think it would really mix things up, and I'm kind of crossing my fingers for this. All right, so let's just do one more. We're gonna go for 4 today, and it comes from Thomas, who asks, how do you feel if DICE implemented an option in Battlefield 4 so that you could dive on grenades, taking the impact, dying of course in the process, but saving anybody that could have been killed by the grenade? You could use this if your whole squad is in a room and an enemy throws a frag grenade in the room, you would have the option to dive on it and save your whole squad. I'm not exactly sure how I would feel about this mechanic, because on the one hand, you're right. If you see a grenade getting tossed amongst your squad mates, you can make the ultimate sacrifice and jump onto it to save everyone's life. But on the other hand, it kind of takes away from the effectiveness of a grenade, because if you get into those tight spots, or you get into those scenarios where there are a bunch of people just around the corner, it would just reduce the effectiveness of the grenade, because one person will just dive on it, save everyone else in the squad, and because, of course, there's probably going to be at least one medic nearby, they'll revive them, and then they'll be back to normal. And you could say well, that's just an added skill element to the game. As long as they're paying attention, as long as they've got that team dynamic down, then it's going to enhance the gameplay, and it's going to require more skill to pull off those maneuvers. But the other side of me just feels like this would take too much away from the grenades themselves, and while I don't think they would be useless, they would still have their place. It wouldn't be a very useful tool at trying to flush people out from behind doorways, or to get them away from an objective, because one person can just drop down on the grenade and then be revived a couple seconds later, and then you really didn't get a use out of that one grenade. But I'd kind of like to get your guys' opinion on this. Would you like to see this mechanic in the upcoming game? Let me know down below in the comment section. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Once again, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a YouTube message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.